2:14 a.m. A quiet Idaho street. A man walks aimlessly, drenched in blood, not his own. His steps are slow, unsteady, as if the weight of what just happened is pressing down on him. Police officers spot him and pull over, their headlights illuminating the red stains on his clothes. One of them steps out, cautious but firm. Before they can ask a single question, the man looks up, his face blank, his voice barely above a whisper. "I had no choice." 911. What's your emergency? Silence. Heavy breathing. Hello? Can you speak? A long pause. Then, the call disconnects. Officers rush to the address linked to the call, expecting a possible break-in, maybe a domestic dispute. What they find is something else entirely. Blood everywhere. Furniture overturned. A single knife lying in the middle of the floor, its blade coated in red. And at the center of it all, Emily Whitman, wife of the man now standing outside, her body lifeless. A pastor, a husband, a father of 3, now a killer. What could drive a man of faith to commit such an act? The answer would come from something no one expected, a DNA test that revealed a truth he never could have imagined. Before we continue, if you enjoy in-depth true crime stories, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. This case is just the beginning, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. What happened inside that house? And was this truly an act of sudden rage? Or had it been coming for far longer than anyone realized? To understand how we got here, we need to go back to where this story began, to a life that, from the outside, seemed perfect. Reverend Daniel Whitman was more than just a pastor. He was a man of faith, a husband, a father, and a pillar of his community. In Caldwell, Idaho, his name was spoken with admiration. He wasn't just the man who preached on Sundays. He was the one people turned to in moments of hardship. When marriages struggled, when grief became too heavy to bear, when faith wavered, they came to him, and he always had an answer. For 15 years, he had shared his life with Emily, his high school sweetheart, the woman he met when they were just teenagers, when the future seemed so bright and full of promise. She had been his first love, his only love. Together, they had built a family, raised 3 children, and created a life that many envied. On the surface, they were the picture of stability, a husband who preached about faith and fidelity, a wife who stood beside him, devoted and kind, 3 children who were well-behaved, well-loved, and deeply rooted in the values their parents had instilled in them. To the outside world, they were perfect. Daniel's sermons were not just words, they were lessons, reminders of how to live a righteous life. He spoke of love, of loyalty, of the importance of trust between husband and wife. His faith was unwavering, and he believed deeply in the vows he had made to Emily all those years ago. To him, marriage was sacred, unbreakable, a covenant before God that was not to be questioned. And for years it seemed that his life reflected the very values he preached. He and Emily were inseparable. Their love had withstood the tests of time, the demands of raising a family, the pressures of leading a church. Their home was a place of warmth and prayer, a place where laughter filled the halls and Sunday dinners were a sacred tradition. To the people of Caldwell, the Whitmans were proof that faith and family could overcome anything. They were admired, respected, trusted. But even the most perfect families have secrets, and even the strongest foundations can begin to crack. Daniel Whitman was raised in the church. It wasn't just a part of his life, it was his life. From the time he was a child, Sunday mornings were sacred. His parents, devout and unwavering in their beliefs, made sure of it. Faith was not an option, it was the foundation of everything. It shaped who he was, how he saw the world, how he would one day raise his own family. He was the kind of boy who memorized scripture before he even understood its meaning, who sat in the front pew, eager to learn, who never questioned, only believed. As he grew older, that devotion never wavered. He knew, from a young age, that his life had a purpose, that he was meant to serve. By the time he was a teenager, there was no doubt Daniel would become a pastor. He would dedicate his life to guiding others, just as he had been guided. And when he met Emily, it only confirmed what he had always known, that God had a plan for him. Daniel met Emily when they were just 16. She was quiet, gentle, the kind of person who made everyone feel at ease. She had a way of listening that made you believe you were the only person in the world who mattered. And for Daniel, she was everything. Their love was simple, Easy. There were no doubts, no second guessing. They knew, even then, that they were meant to be together, that their futures were already written. They married young, right after college. It wasn't a question of if, it was a matter of when. Their families gathered in a small church, the same one where Daniel had spent his childhood. He stood at the altar, watching as Emily walked toward him, her veil catching the light. And in that moment, there was nothing but certainty. Nothing but the promise of a life filled with faith, family, and unwavering devotion. Caldwell wasn't just a town, it was a family. And the Whitmans were at the heart of it. People trusted them, believed in them. When they spoke of love, of commitment, of the strength of marriage, people listened. They were the couple others looked up to, the ones who set the example. Daniel officiated weddings, counseled young couples, prayed over newborns in the congregation. He was there for every milestone, every sorrow. When someone lost a loved one, he was the first to offer comfort. When a marriage was struggling, he was the voice of reason, the reminder that love was worth fighting for. And Emily, she was just as beloved. She organized charity events, worked with mothers in the community, opened their home to anyone in need. Together, they were more than just a family. They were a symbol, a reminder that goodness, faith, and commitment could still exist in a world that often felt uncertain. But behind closed doors, things were beginning to shift. Small things, almost unnoticeable. A quiet tension in Daniel's voice, a fleeting hesitation in Emily's smile, a growing distance that neither of them acknowledged. Because when a foundation begins to crack, it doesn't happen all at once. It happens slowly, quietly, until one day, everything breaks. A dimly lit home office, a laptop screen glows softly in the darkness. A DNA test kit sits on the wooden desk, untouched for days. The camera slowly zooms in on a cursor hovering over an email notification. Your DNA results are ready. It started with something innocent, a simple curiosity, a fun, harmless DNA test. Emily had taken one months earlier, eager to learn more about her ancestry, to connect with long-lost relatives. It was the kind of thing people did all the time. Just a click of a button, a quick swab of saliva, and within weeks, you had a breakdown of your origins. Daniel never cared much for things like that. His roots were in the church, in his faith, but Emily had insisted. Maybe they could find out if their kids carried traces of European heritage, or perhaps something unexpected. It was meant to be nothing more than an interesting discovery, a gift, a novelty, nothing life-changing. The email clicks open. The camera lingers on the words, "View your results." A moment of hesitation, then a click. The screen loads. The brightness of the monitor reflects in Daniel's eyes, but in an instant, his world changed. The results were supposed to confirm what Daniel already knew, that his children were his. There was no doubt in his mind. There never had been. He had watched them take their first steps, had soothed them when they cried, had raised them with unwavering love. He knew them inside and out. But the DNA said otherwise. Each name was listed under immediate family, his 3 children. But under the paternal match section, there was a problem, an error, a mistake. Because next to the word father, his name wasn't there. Instead, there was another name, one that made his heart stop. Aaron Whitman. Aaron Whitman was more than just Daniel's brother. He was his twin, his mirror image. They had shared everything, childhood bedrooms, birthday parties, inside jokes. They were bound by something stronger than words. But somewhere along the way, their paths had diverged. Daniel had taken the path of faith, of discipline. He had built a family, a community. He had become a leader, a man people turned to for guidance. Aaron had not. Aaron was different, restless, wild, the kind of person who never quite settled. He had moved from job to job, town to town, never staying in one place long enough to plant roots. He had charm, yes, but it was fleeting, a smile that didn't always reach his eyes. A presence that felt unpredictable, like a storm on the horizon. And now the truth was staring Daniel in the face. For minutes, Daniel didn't move. He just stared, at the screen, at the name, at the truth that had been buried for over a decade. His children, the ones he had prayed over, held in his arms, watched grow. They weren't his. Biologically, they never had been. And it wasn't a stranger who had betrayed him. It wasn't some faceless name. It was Aaron, his own blood, his own twin. A betrayal so deep, so unimaginable that for a moment, the world tilted. The questions came next, the doubts, the memories that had once meant nothing now seemed laced with hidden truths. Had it been one time, a mistake, a lapse in judgment? Or had it been more, something ongoing, something secret? Had Emily loved Aaron? Had she ever loved Daniel at all? And most importantly, did she know? Had she known all these years? Had she lived beside him, slept beside him, built a life with him, all while keeping this buried? Daniel scrolling through old photos, the kids' faces, searching for something, some resemblance he had never noticed before. The way his eldest son's eyes crinkled when he smiled, just like Aaron's. The way his daughter's chin dimpled, not like his, but like his brother's. How had he never seen it? A DNA test. That's all it was. A simple curiosity, a harmless gift. But it had unearthed something he was never meant to know. The kind of truth that doesn't just hurt, it destroys. And in that moment, as Daniel sat alone in the quiet of his home, one thought gripped him. One thought took hold and refused to let go. He needed to know the truth, all of it. And he would get his answers, no matter what it took. But what he didn't know was that the truth would come at a cost, one that no one would see coming. For 15 years, Daniel Whitman had built his life on faith. It was his foundation, his guiding force. His sermons were filled with words of love, redemption, and the power of forgiveness. He had preached about overcoming struggles, about trusting in God's plan. But this was something else entirely. This wasn't a test of faith. This was an earthquake, a shift so violent, so all-consuming, that it threatened to break him apart from the inside out. And sitting in that church, staring out at the people who had trusted him, who had looked to him for answers, Daniel wondered how many of them knew. The questions came at all hours. They didn't stop. They didn't quiet. They circled in his head like vultures, picking at every memory, every conversation, every moment he had ever shared with Emily. Was their marriage ever real? Had Emily loved Aaron all along? Had he been nothing more than a placeholder? And the people, the friends, the congregation, the neighbors, had they known? Had they whispered behind his back? Had they looked at his children and seen what he had been too blind to notice? Had they been laughing at him this entire time? Conversations with Emily changed. The warmth was gone, the ease. It had been replaced by something cold, careful. Every word felt calculated, every glance a test. Did she know? Could she tell? Could she see what was happening inside him? Daniel watched her closely now. The way she moved, the way she spoke, searching for signs, for guilt, for regret, for anything that might explain why she had done this to him. But she gave him nothing. He used to feel safe beside her. Now, he felt like he was lying next to a stranger. The sleepless nights turned into restless days. His mind never stopped. He couldn't focus, couldn't eat. He started driving at night, aimlessly, searching for answers in the empty streets. But no matter how far he went, the questions followed. And then, one night, he found himself parked outside Aaron's house. A dark suburban street. The only light comes from a street lamp flickering above. Daniel sits in his car, gripping the steering wheel, staring at the house. The silhouette of a man moves behind the curtains. Aaron's house was smaller than Daniel's, messier, less lived in. A place for someone who never intended to stay for long. A place for someone who had never built a real home. Daniel hadn't seen his brother in months, not since the DNA test, not since the truth had unraveled. He hadn't called, hadn't confronted him, not yet. But sitting there, watching the lights flicker inside, he felt something rising in his chest. Something heavy, something sharp. He needed to hear it from him, from Aaron's own mouth. Daniel steps out of the car, his breath visible in the cold night air. He walks toward the house, stops. His hand hovers over the doorbell, a moment of hesitation. Then he knocks. Silence. Then footsteps. The door creaks open. Aaron stands there, disheveled, eyes narrowing in confusion. Dan? A long pause, the tension thick. And in that moment, Daniel saw it, in his brother's face, in his eyes. He already knew. Daniel had imagined this moment 1,000 times. He had played out the confrontation in his mind, what he would say, how he would demand the truth. But now, sitting there, the words wouldn't come. Because Aaron wasn't denying it. He wasn't even surprised. Aaron sighs, rubbing his face. A long silence. Then, I never meant for it to happen this way. Daniel's fingers tighten around his knees. His jaw clenches. How long? Aaron looks away. Dan, how? A pause. Then the answer. Quiet, heavy, from the beginning. Something shifted in that moment. Something inside him cracked. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a lapse in judgment. It had never been a one-time thing. From the very start, from the moment he said "I do," Emily had already belonged to someone else. And Aaron had taken everything from him. Had his entire life been a lie? There were countless ways Daniel could have found out the truth. A stray comment from a friend, a suspicious timeline, an old message on Emily's phone. But in the end, it was just a piece of paper. A simple test, meant for curiosity, but one that would destroy everything. 3 children, 3 little lives he had loved, protected and guided, but the results were indisputable. They weren't his. Not a stranger's. Not a mistake in the lab. The DNA was a perfect match to his own twin brother, Aaron. Emily's face freezes as she sees the paper in his hand. A moment of stillness, then panic. For a moment, Emily didn't speak. Then her voice wavered. She tried to explain, tried to reach for him, but Daniel wasn't hearing her. His mind had already started unraveling. Emily's secret had been buried for over a decade, but now it was clawing its way to the surface. The truth? It hadn't been an affair, not in the way most would assume. Years ago, before their first child was born, Daniel had struggled with infertility. Countless doctor visits, failed attempts, and through it all, a quiet desperation grew between them. One night, when Daniel was away on a church retreat, Emily had turned to the one person who had always been close, Aaron. Maybe it was comfort. Maybe it was a moment of weakness. Maybe it was something else entirely. But that night changed everything. The first pregnancy came quickly after that night. Daniel never suspected anything. Why would he? He trusted his wife. He trusted his brother. And Emily, she convinced herself that what she had done was for the sake of their marriage, that it was a secret best left untold. But secrets have a way of surfacing, and this one? It came with a death sentence. Daniel was a man of God, a man who had preached forgiveness, love, understanding, but as he sat in the silence of his home, one thought consumed him. Some betrayals could not be forgiven, though Emily swore she had him in mind when doing it, that it was never meant to be a betrayal. But to Daniel, every memory, every smile, every moment with his children now felt like a lie. And worst of all, the whispers in his mind, the belief that maybe, just maybe, God wanted him to make this right. And that night, Daniel made a decision, one that would change everything. April 14th. The last time anyone would see Emily Whitman alive. Emily Whitman had no idea that tonight would be her last. No idea that every moment, every breath was leading to something unimaginable. No one knows exactly what set Daniel off that night. Was it something Emily said? A glance, a word, a sigh too heavy with guilt? Or had the weight of everything simply become too much? The argument started in the bedroom, then moved to the hallway, then to the kitchen. Emily begged him to calm down, tried to explain, but Daniel wasn't hearing words anymore. Just betrayal, just sin, just the feeling of his entire world crumbling around him. Emily had seen Daniel angry before, frustrated, upset, but tonight was different. The man standing in their kitchen wasn't the man she had married. His face was blank, unreadable, but his eyes, they held something she had never seen before. She would later be found with defensive wounds on her hands, deep cuts, bruises along her arms, a sign that she fought back. That in those final moments, she knew. Daniel takes slow steps toward the counter. His hand reaches for something, just out of sight. The handle of a butcher knife. Emily's body tenses. There's a silence between them, a charged, suffocating silence. Then, Daniel, what are you doing? It wasn't quick, it wasn't clean. The crime scene would later tell a story of chaos, of desperation. The autopsy report would show multiple stab wounds, some deep, some shallow, hesitation marks, proof that Daniel wasn't just trying to kill her, he was unraveling with every strike. In the heat of his rage, in the depths of his betrayal, he didn't stop. Not when she pleaded. Not when her strength gave out. Not when the room filled with nothing but the sound of his own heavy breathing. At some point, the rage faded. At some point, the realization crept in. The house around him was silent now. Too silent. And then, the sound of footsteps. Small, hesitant footsteps. One of the Whitman children, woken by the commotion, steps cautiously into the dimly lit hallway. They had seen, and in that moment, Daniel knew he couldn't stay. The mind does strange things in moments like this. Some killers try to clean up, to cover their tracks. Others break down, unable to move. But Daniel, he walked, he wandered. For nearly an hour, he roamed the quiet streets of his town. No destination, no plan, just the overwhelming weight of what he had done pressing down on him with every step. And when they stopped him, when they stepped out and called his name, Daniel Whitman finally looked up. His face was blank, his hands were still shaking, and his voice, when he finally spoke, was eerily calm. I had no choice. She betrayed me, he betrayed me, they all did. Nothing could have prepared them for what they found inside. The brutality of it, the sheer violence, the life that had been taken in an instant, all because of one devastating secret. But what they didn't know yet was that this case was far from over. Something doesn't add up. Because as the investigation unfolded, as detectives pieced together the final moments leading up to Emily's death, they realized the truth was even more disturbing than they had imagined. And Daniel Whitman's story? It wasn't over yet. Daniel Whitman's confession sent shockwaves through the town. A respected pastor, a devoted father, now a murderer. But if his confession had stunned the community, what came next would leave them in utter disbelief. In the days following the murder, investigators combed through every detail of Daniel's life. They retraced his steps, analyzed his phone records, his emails, searching for an answer to the one question no one could escape. Was this truly a crime of passion, or had it been planned all along? Daniel had purchased the DNA test 6 months prior, suggesting that the seeds of doubt had been growing long before the night of the murder. Surveillance footage showed him outside his brother Aaron's house weeks before the crime, sitting in his car for hours. A search history on his computer revealed disturbing queries. How to make someone disappear. Crimes of passion defenses. Biblical justice for adultery. Had Daniel already decided what he was going to do long before that night? Or had the truth simply pushed him past the breaking point? For years, Daniel had preached forgiveness, faith, and family. His congregation had trusted him, sought his guidance. Now, they were left questioning everything. He baptized my daughter. How could he do something like this? This isn't the man we knew. Or maybe we never really knew him at all. The betrayal ran deep, not just within his family, but throughout the town. The trial wasn't just about justice for Emily. It was about confronting the truth of who Daniel Whitman really was. The trial began 5 months after Emily's murder. The prosecution painted a clear picture. This wasn't a moment of insanity. It was vengeance, cold, calculated vengeance. Daniel didn't snap, he planned. The crime scene showed overkill, a level of violence beyond a crime of passion. His search history, his erratic behavior, his quiet stalking of his brother, they all pointed to intent. But the defense had a different story to tell. Daniel had suffered a psychological break. A devout man, he had built his life on faith and family. Discovering the betrayal shattered everything he believed in. His actions were not premeditated. They were the result of extreme emotional distress. Then came the most unsettling testimony of all, Daniel's own words. For the first time since his arrest, Daniel addressed the court, and what he said left the room in stunned silence. I did what had to be done. She lied, she betrayed me, and in God's eyes, she had to answer for that. I wasn't acting alone, God told me to do it. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Emily's mother burst into tears. The judge's expression hardened. There it was, the chilling justification Daniel had clung to from the very beginning. But was it true? Had he truly convinced himself that this was divine justice, or was this his way of avoiding responsibility? After weeks of testimony, of evidence, of gut-wrenching accounts of Emily's final moments, the jury was ready. Has the jury reached a verdict? We have, Your Honor. A long pause. The room is silent. Then, we find the defendant guilty of second-degree murder. The courtroom erupted. Emily's family sobbed in relief. The town finally had its answer. But Daniel, he didn't flinch. He didn't cry, didn't argue, didn't plead. He simply lowered his head and smiled. The sentence was swift, life in prison, no possibility of parole. As the gavel came down, sealing his fate, Daniel turned to the courtroom, to his former congregation, to the cameras capturing every moment. And he whispered something under his breath. Only one reporter caught it. God told me to do it. Pastor Daniel Whitman sentenced to life. A cold grey prison, a small narrow cell. Daniel sitting on his cot, Bible open in his lap. He lifts his head and he smiles again. Daniel Whitman never expressed remorse, never apologized, never showed a flicker of regret. His only words, the same ones he whispered that day in court. This isn't over. A pastor, a husband, a father, a man who had dedicated his life to faith, to his community, to the belief that family was sacred, reduced to a murderer, a family torn apart by secrets, by lies, by an unthinkable betrayal. Emily Whitman, a loving mother, a devoted wife, her life cut short in the very home where she had raised her children. 3 children left without a mother and without a father. Aaron Whitman, the twin brother whose DNA set this tragedy in motion, forced into hiding, his name forever linked to the crime, even though he had committed none. A town left to question how well they ever really knew the man who stood at the pulpit every Sunday. Even behind bars, Daniel remained unrepentant. He never spoke Emily's name again, never acknowledged his children, never admitted that what he had done was wrong. Instead, he told fellow inmates that he had been chosen, that his actions were not murder, but judgment, that he had carried out God's will. Whether he truly believed it, or whether it was his way of escaping responsibility, no one will ever know. Was this a crime of passion, a tragic consequence of deception? Or was there something deeper at play, something buried within Daniel long before that fateful night? Had his entire life been a performance? Or did he truly break the moment he read the results of that DNA test? And what about Aaron? Did he know? Was it an affair or something else? Had Emily been keeping a secret? Or was she just as much a victim of fate as she was of her husband's wrath? We may never have all the answers, but one thing is certain. A single truth, a single betrayal, was enough to destroy an entire family. Now I want to hear from you. What do you think really pushed Daniel over the edge? Was this an act of temporary insanity? Or had this darkness been inside him all along? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you thought this case was disturbing, you won't believe what happened in the next story. Click here to watch.